And now it's my honor and privilege to introduce you to our first featured reader of tonight, Jean Tuomey, who lives in County Mayo in Ireland. She's published in national and international journals. Her chapbook Magical Thinking was highly commended in Fools for Poetry in 2021. And in that same year, she won the Jonathan Swift Creative Writing Award for Poetry and the St. Francis Hospice Poetry Prize in 2022. Her debut collection, Swept Back by Lapwing, was launched in December 2022. And oh no, certain Irish word, so I hope I pronounce it. Catherley Award for Contribution to the Arts in Mayo 2023. And please correct me, Jean, if I pronounce that in a horrible wrong way. A former teacher, she facilitates writing groups in the west of Ireland. And Jean, we have a tradition here. You have been here before, so you may know it, that I read the work of a poet and I do a personal reflection. And I read your poems, and here's what I thought. There's a quiet magic in these poems. The first day of spring, coffee outdoors, plants and flowers, the promise of summer, the magic of things to come and of things that keep returning, but also the magic, or maybe even the magic of a small return to things that are lost. The image of the Father features in many of these poems, a memory that comes alive again through the magic of poetry. This is a poetry that transports us through time and place to a life where everything matters, where every sound, smell, and sight carries meaning. And this is a poetry of balance, where the big world sometimes intrudes in the small world of childhood, but also where a world of small wonders grows big to fill our minds with magic. And also, that's our other ritual. We always ask a question beforehand. And Jean, my question for today is, how has poetry surprised you, or maybe keeps on surprising you?
Mila, first of all, thank you very much for your kind words on my collection. I appreciate it. How has poetry surprised me? It always surprises me. It's one of, I mean, there's lots of things important in life. Poetry is one of the most important things in my life, if that's not too big a statement to say. And I think it surprises me by, you know, the big issues like birth and death and illness and loss and war and peace have been written about, you know, for centuries, yet it's fresh every time. And that's what I love. You know, each poem in its own simple way addresses the big issues, distills the themes, and I find that helpful for me in getting me through my life. I turn to poetry as my backup, my support. It's important.
Wow, that's a beautiful reflection. Thank you. And with that, I think we're all eager to hear your poems. So,
okay. The first poem I'm going to read tonight is called Swept Back. It's the poem that gave the title to my collection. And as Mila mentioned, a lot of the poems in this collection are about my father. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2006, and it took us by storm a bit. And I wrote a lot through that time to kind of process his journey and our journey. So the poem is called Swept Back. He ended up going into a nursing home for 2 years, which broke our hearts. Swept back for my father after reading Theodore Organ's Running with the Immortals. The only time I saw you cry was the night I read you Dorgan's poem, the one about Cove and its hills. You took the ferry each morning to work on the Hall Bowling of his poem, packed us into your yawls on Sundays, no life jackets in those days, pushed our prams up and down the steep blue streets. Men did that, Mother says, took strength to tackle those hills. That night in your chair, you fell back to Cove. Maybe the poem's force 10 tossed you overboard, cast you onto Harbour Hill. Perhaps you heard the drone of the ferry one more time, felt sea spray on your face, shearwater sails swollen with wind from the west. Will I carry on, Mina? Yep. Okay, so the next poem I chose it because of the time of year that it is. It's springtime, and those of us that like gardening are beginning, in spite of all the rain we're getting, to think about the garden again. And my father was the most amazing gardener. We were lucky, we had a beautiful garden at home. And so obviously, when it comes to gardening time, I think of him. So it's called Seedlings. It's not the conversations we could have had that I regret. Evenings I studied while you worked late, and we met in the hall or at the dinner table, or on Sunday drives and camping holidays. It's on days like today, planting seedlings, red mizuna, kale, beetroot, or soaking the beans we found in the shed the first spring after you'd gone. That's when loss sprouts. And the next poem I wrote during COVID, as Mila mentioned, I live on the west coast of Ireland, but my home of origin is on the east, just north of Dublin. So obviously for months, there was a time when I couldn't travel home. And at the time, my mother died last year, but at the time she was elderly and my sister was doing a lot of the keeping her company and keeping an eye on her. So as sisters, we began to converse through photographs, as a lot of family members do. We're all very fond of gardening in the family, so that's how we communicated. This poem is called We Speak in Flowers. My sister sends a purple allium, the first flower our father drew for us, its starburst spikes planted in pencil on the page. I reply with a foxglove. Trust she will remember the dress-up day we wore their thimble blooms as jewellery. I try to send a bee buzzing in the memory, but it will not pose. I want to send the open beauty of my yellow rose, its peach perfume, but its petals close for good. I put it in the compost bin. I only share good news. Sometimes we speak in birds. Her blackbird in the bird bath before bedtime. My robin scavenging every last crumb on the patio. A final clear-up once the sparrows have flown. I settle on my thrush. We both like its measled chest. Every day we talk in mother. My sister sends her reading in the shade, weeding the bluebell patch from a chair, or leaning over on her stick to greet a long-awaited peony. When there are no pictures, I send a heart. And this poem is about, as an adult, I returned to learning the piano and I decided to go right back to the beginning and go through all of the exams again. And as I moved higher up the grade, it became stressful. And my partner comes from a place a couple of miles outside Castlebar, where there's a most beautiful lake called Loch Cara. It's a famous lake for its beauty. And one of the evenings before the piano exam, we went for a walk and it just calmed me down. So this is about the walk. On the eve of the piano exam, only minutes from your house, we climb over the stone wall, clamber across Kathleen's Rock. We have stepped away to a flat land of orchids, rabbits, wild ponies. The dipping trough, buried beneath blackthorn, is dry. The stench of Cooper's dip long gone. It is the song of the blackbird that catches our breath. The lake stills us. Pink clouds ripple its surface. Evening light mirrors the marl. Black-headed gulls screech from the updraft, swoop for their last perch, settle on the shore. We stroll to Kilkieran, houses huddled behind hedgerows, back windows front the water. The old graveyard, where neighbours are still neighbours, draws us in. Loch Cara laps against the cemetery wall, always there for them, always will be. The months of preparing pieces, scales, arpeggios, chromatics, unseens and theory pause. No longer staccato, we return home legato. Okay, and this is the final poem tonight. There's an island off the west coast of Ireland, small little island called Inishbofin. I think it's Ireland's best kept secret, and there's a really, really lovely family-run hotel there. And I run a summer course there every year in September. And the family that set up the hotel, the mother, Mrs. Murray, died, and she was very fond of her geraniums in the sun porch. So I wrote this for her and captured the magic of early morning on Inishbofin. So it's called Early Morning Inishbofin in memory of Margaret Murray. Fill your ears with birdsong against the island's slow awakening. Swallows, lapwings own this time. Watch fishing boats circle in sparkles on the sea, returned for a second net. An hour of sunlight poured through remembered red geraniums. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Jean. That was wonderful.